Growing up, I wanted to be a lot of different things, but a scientist was never one of them. Yet, here I am, a scientist. My name is Brooklyn, and I'm a PhD student at NC State University. And up until recently, I've always viewed my journey to becoming a scientist as something of an outlier, something unlikely for an individual of my circumstances. Someone who is a first-generation college student, someone from a poor rural community with limited resources, and someone who didn't have easy access to science museums or community programming. I've actually viewed myself as someone who has always struggled to connect with science, yet somehow became a scientist. But my whole perspective of this changed when I started my PhD and began studying the relationships between people and science, and thus began to question my own relationship with science. Specifically, I began reflecting on my connections with science growing up and how they could have inspired me to become a scientist. See, even though I didn't engage in stereotypical science activities growing up, I feel like there has to be something that explains my connection to science and how I got to where I am today. Now, I thought that my memory alone wouldn't serve a reflection of my childhood well. So I reached out to someone who was there to witness it all, my dad. I went to my dad with a few questions to answer. First, what types of activities was I frequently engaging in as a kid that we could relate to science? And secondly, to get at some potential elusive science connections, I wanted to reflect on everyday around the house activities that might have been informing or creating science connections for me in some way. And so, here's what he had to say.
You enjoyed reading a lot. I think a lot of the stuff you draw, even with your art, I thought is probably, animal science related or scenes, right? Nature scenes. I don't know if it was Mima or We Got You, or maybe it was Santa Claus. But yeah, I do remember to getting a microscope, and then you would go down to the creek.
I took creek water samples.
Got creek water samples at Mima's, and looking under the microscope, looking at. Actually, I think it kind of started with my transformer. I had a transformer that was a microscope.
What?
You're always interested about things, asking questions. We'd go outside. I think that's a good part of it, because when you're out in nature, you're seeing stuff different.
Do you think I was seeing like the nature of science in any way around the house?
I was all the time I loved the Discovery Channel and History Channel and all that, so I know I was all the time watching any type of nature documentary. I love learning about all that stuff, so I know you saw a lot of it.
Stuff you were interested in.
And I like to try to fix my own things. The way we interacted and talked when you were a kid, you probably picked up on a lot of that too. I think probably one of the biggest influences for you that you didn't realize, but undoubtedly is there, would be the Force.
I know. Does it
feel weird? Yes.
After having this conversation about my dad regarding my childhood experiences and science connections, I realized two really important things. First, I have always had a connection with science. It just didn't look like what I expected it to, the stereotypical stuff. So it was a bit harder for me to realize. Secondly, and I think most importantly, I realized that my science connections were more than a mere object or a series of activities. It was a person. My science connection was my dad. When he built and fixed things around the house, I was watching him learn and problem solve. For years, I watched him collect and empty the rain gauge in our garden and meticulously record and track the seasonal rainfall in our backyard. I actually found the charts. And as he learned and explored the natural world around him through popular media or one of the countless walks that we took outside together, he was simultaneously instilling that love of learning and exploration in me. All of these things were and still are valid science experiences. Because what is science anyway? An online Oxford Languages Dictionary simply defines it as knowledge of any kind, the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the study of the structure and behavior of both the physical and natural worlds around us through observation and experiment. Now, I share my science story to propose the following. What if we thought about science and the potential connections that we could make with it in this broader, everyday context, like my dad did with me? Would more people feel connected to science? Would more people feel like they could do it and pursue it? Could countering this harmful, stereotypical narrative of science with this broad, diverse narrative make science more inclusive and accessible? I'm of the opinion that yes, it could. If we could make everyday connections to science more apparent in our personal lives and within our communities, if we could welcome diverse science experiences as valid experiences, we would probably have more people that felt like they belong to the scientific community. People, including myself. Maybe there wouldn't be unlikely scientists or scientists who didn't know they wanted to be a scientist. Because science is for everyone, it is for anyone. And yes, I'm going to say it, like the Force, the potential to connect with science is all around us.
The Force is all around us.
Yeah.
The tree, the rock, the bush, the dog, me,
You forgot me.
you. You to me to the rock, the tree, to rock, to you. Yes.